Petrograd, 1917. The Winter Palace. Once the jewel of the Romanov Empire, now trembled under the weight of revolution and uncertainty, where Captain Dmitry Volkov of the Imperial Guard watched the crowds gather from a frosted window. His loyalty to the Tsar, crumbling faster than the ice on the Neva River. He was not a man of politics, but of order. The current chaos, however, was beyond any military solution. It felt fated. On the Tsar's direct, whispered command to command that felt more like a plea, Dmitry was tasked with securing the emperor's private archive. This was not about gold or jewels. This was about the secrets that had kept the 300-year dynasty standing firm against history's tide. Deep within the dusty labyrinth beneath the private library, Dmitry found it. A small, lead-sealed chest resting on a plinth of marble. The chest was completely unmarked, possessing a coldness that had nothing to do with the Siberian winter creeping through the palace stones. As Dmitry's gloved hand touched the lead, a sharp, crystalline pulse of energy snapped against his palm, forcing him to recoil. This was not just an old box. This was the source of the Romanov myth. He retrieved a specialized, non-metallic pry bar from his kit, the kind used to disarm unstable magical artifacts, not just old locks. Inside the chest, there was no treasure, only a single, slender object wrapped in ancient linen, a scepter, no longer than a man's forearm. The handle was cold iron, intricately carved with interlocking symbols of clocks, anchors, and crowns, all frozen in motion. The head, however, was terrifying. A perfect, unblemished sphere of deep blue crystal that seemed to absorb all light and sound around it. This was the Chronos scepter, the true Tsar's secret whispered about in the most isolated monasteries of the Ural Mountains. It was an instrument not of power, but of inevitability. The Tsar had not ruled. He had merely been a caretaker of fate. A sudden deep chill filled the subterranean room, causing the single gas lamp to flicker violently. Dmitry was no longer alone. Standing in the archway, his eyes burning with unnatural intensity, was the court's most enigmatic and feared advisor, Grigory. Grigory was more shadow than man, his influence over the Serena notorious, his true motives unknown, yet utterly magnetic. Captain Volkov. Grigory's voice was a low, sibilant rasp, like dry leaves dragged across stone. You should not have touched the anchor. Dmitry instinctively drew his sidearm, aiming the cold steel at the advisor's chest. Stand down, Grigory. By imperial order, this artifact is secured. Grigory merely smiled, a slow, predatory curve of his lips. Imperial order? The Imperium is ending, Captain? I am here to ensure it does not simply repeat itself. He took a single step, and the air crackled, causing the dust motes to rise and swirl like iron filings around a magnet. The scepter does not control time, Dmitry. It locks it. It makes the Romanov dynasty the inevitable, unchangeable truth of Russia, Grigory explained, his voice laced with manic zeal. And now that the world has demanded change, the scepter must be broken. Fate must be set free, even if Russia must shatter in the process. Dmitry realized that Grigory was not an imperial servant, but a magical anarchist seeking to unleash the full, horrifying force of chaos. Dmitry didn't hesitate. He swung the heavy lead chest, hitting the lamp and plunging the chamber into utter darkness, clutched the scepter to his uniform, turning and sprinting down the narrow corridor before Grigory could fully react to the loss of light. He heard a sound behind him, not footsteps, but the wet, ripping sound of something massive and spectral tearing through the very walls. Dmitry scrambled up a forgotten servant's stairwell, the scepter vibrating hotly against his ribs, burning through his uniform. He emerged into the deserted upper floor of the Winter Palace, the main halls already echoing with the sounds of looting and revolutionary fervor. His mission had changed. It wasn't about saving the Tsar's secrets anymore. It was about preventing Grigory from weaponizing the scepter. If Grigory shattered the scepter, the collective fate of every Russian soul could be instantly and violently rewritten. Dmitry crossed the vast, empty ballroom. His heart hammered in time with the distant, rhythmic chanting of the mob outside. He needed to get out of the palace, out of Petrograd, and take the scepter to the remotest place. He knew the Tsar's hunting lodge in deep Siberia. Grigory was close. Dmitry could feel the cold, oppressive pressure of his magic closing the distance. He slipped into the stables, startling a pair of massive Russian Orlov trotters. magnificent horses used only for the most urgent imperial travel. He quickly saddled the largest one, ignoring the chaos erupting just blocks away. He had perhaps 10 minutes before the mob breached the inner gates. He mounted the horse, the Chronos scepter secured in a dispatch tube strapped across his back. As he rode out through a rarely used side gate, he saw Grigori appear on a balcony high above the courtyard. Grigori didn't shout. He simply raised his hand, and a wave of pure, concentrated frost shot out, narrowly missing Dmitri's head. The blast hit the gatepost, instantly freezing the thick oak solid, cracking it down the middle like brittle porcelain. Dmitri spurred the horse into a frantic gallop, the beast sensing the unnatural cold and danger behind them. They rode through the dark, freezing streets of Petrograd, past revolutionary checkpoints manned by bewildered armed citizens. No one stopped a lone imperial guard riding like the devil was after him. They merely cleared the way, fearing the madness he carried. Dmitri knew Grigori wouldn't rely on a simple chase. Grigori would use his unnatural influence to corrupt the path ahead. After 2 hours of relentless riding, the horse was failing, breathing heavily in the sub-zero air. Dmitri stopped at a small railway station on the city outskirts, the lines jammed with refugees and soldiers trying to escape west. The Chronos scepter felt like a lump of raw electricity against his spine, humming with restrained, impossible power. Dmitri discarded his uniform coat, replacing it with a simple, anonymous fur-rimmed traveler's cloak he pilfered from a forgotten luggage cart. He boarded an eastbound goods train, finding a hiding spot beneath a pile of canvas tarps, his body vibrating with tension and exhaustion. The train lurched forward, pulling away from the capital and heading toward the vast, empty canvas of Mother Russia. The journey was a blur of cold, rattling iron and the pervasive fear of discovery. Days later, deep in the Russian heartland, Dmitri had to leave the train, knowing Grigori's reach would extend to the railway lines. He walked often for 10 or 12 hours straight, fueled by desperation and a small supply of stale bread and vodka. He felt the pursuit not as footsteps, but as the increasing tension in the very atmosphere. The silence in the forests was too deep, the snow too sudden. One evening, sheltering in an abandoned logging cabin, Dmitri finally dared to unwrap the scepter. He studied the ancient inscriptions etched into the iron handle, comparing them to the cryptic notes in the Tsar's archive. The symbols confirmed his fear. The scepter wasn't a weapon. It was an artifact of static destiny, anchoring the future to the past. To break it would be to unleash all 300 years of repressed fate at once, a magical catastrophe that could wipe Russia off the map. Dmitri had no intention of using it. His goal was merely to hide it so effectively that no force, magical or revolutionary, could ever find it again. He traveled onward, guided by the flickering, internal compass of the scepter itself, which seemed to draw him to the deep, protective cold of the east. After nearly a month, he reached the remote Siberian forest near the designated hunting lodge. The lodge, a cluster of thick timber buildings, sat frozen and still beneath a silent, star-choked sky. It was too quiet. The silence was the silence of a trap, not the silence of the wilderness. Dmitri approached the main lodge slowly, his hand resting on the hilt of his saber, the scepter heavy on his back. As he stepped onto the porch, the door creaked open, revealing the interior bathed in the eerie glow of a single, unnatural green flame. Sitting calmly at a table carved from a single piece of dark wood, sipping tea, was Grigori. "Welcome, Captain Volkov." "You lead a delightful chase," Grigori said, his smile radiating cold triumph. But the scepter always returns to those who seek its final purpose. Dmitri knew this was the end of the road. No escape, no cavalry, just the two of them, and the terrible power between them. "I won't let you break it, Grigori. You'll destroy everything," Dmitri warned, raising the scepter like a shield. Grigori rose, his movements smooth and inhumanly graceful. "And what will you do, Dmitri? Hide it. Let the Romanovs' chained fate choke the future forever." "I will save Russia from you," Dmitri declared, gripping the iron handle of the scepter. Grigori laughed, a hollow sound that bounced off the wooden walls. "Okay, noble sentiment. But your loyalty is flawed. Okay, only the breaking can truly free." Grigori moved with sudden, impossible speed, transforming into a swirling cloud of frost and shadow that rushed toward Dmitri. Dmitri parried the spectral attack with his saber, steel screeching against the magical force field, the air filling with ozone. He knew he couldn't beat Grigori's magic with just a sword. He had to gamble on the scepter itself. Dmitri slammed the scepter's crystal head onto the wooden table with all his strength, not trying to break it, but to activate its protective properties. The blue crystal flared instantly, releasing a blinding wave of light that wasn't warm but intensely, shockingly cold. The light wasn't energy, it was pure condensed inertia. It instantly froze everything in the room, trapping the shadows and the air itself. Grigori Kotmitatak was encased in a perfect, shimmering cocoon of ice, and stopped time, a horrified sneer permanently etched onto his face. Dmitri, shielded only by the direct grip on the iron, gasped, the shock of the cold driving the air from his lungs. The scepter now rested on the table, humming, crystal glowing with the full weight of 3 centuries of concentrated destiny. Dmitri realized the truth. The scepter couldn't just lock the Romanovs' fate. It locked its keeper's fate as well. The Tsar was no longer its keeper, Dmitri was. To possess the scepter was to be bound forever to the impossible task of maintaining stasis. He looked at the frozen image of Grigori, the magical anarchist, unable to move or speak, utterly defeated. Dmitri picked up the scepter, didn't use its power to restore the Tsar. He used his last ounce of will to make a choice for the future. He took the scepter out into the darkest corner of the Siberian woods, where the air was coldest and the mountains oldest. With a heavy, deliberate stroke, Dmitri plunged the chronoscepter into the center of a mile-thick glacier. He drove it down until the blue crystal was submerged, encapsulated in the eternal, unmoving ice of the ancient world. The moment the scepter was fully buried, the massive glacier cracked, a thunderous, mile-long fissure announcing that fate was finally, irrevocably free. The frozen cocoon around Grigori instantly melted. The advisor shrieked in confusion and rage, finding the scepter gone. But Grigori was too late. The dynasty had fallen, not because of a revolution, but because its mystical anchor was finally released. Dmitri Volkov simply walked away from the lodge, leaving his uniform, his title, and his past behind in the dissolving imperial world. He became a ghost, an anonymous traveler in the new Russia, the only man who knew the true reason why the Romanov star had fallen. He never saw Grigori again, believing the anarchist was either consumed by the freed fate or simply faded away, his singular purpose lost. The Tsar's secret was no longer a symbol of power, but a powerful promise that history, once anchored, could be set free by one determined man. The Chronos scepter rests still, a deep blue heart of impossibility, buried beneath the perpetual ice, waiting for history to forget it entirely. Did Dmitri choose correctly? Was the fall of the Tsar inevitable? Or did Dmitri just trade one form of tyranny for another? Write your comment below. Like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio.